Hi, everybody. I want to give a little input on leadership in the 21st century, or in this decade, and the relationship between the new leadership and spirituality. And I hope you can hear me in spite of the fact that there's somebody in my garden repairing something with a very loud machine. So I hope that it will not bother you too much. I feel it's a very relevant topic to talk about because, first of all, many people still have a very, you could say, very colored relationship to spirituality. For many people, as soon as we say spirituality, they're like, ugh, I don't want to have anything to do about it, especially not if I'm a leader, and especially not if I have to have a particular kind of spirituality in order to be a leader in the 21st century. Ugh, let me escape that. And I understand, because spirituality has a bad rep in many areas of life. And I think it's because we associate spirituality with religion, and religion has done a lot of good, but also a lot of damage. A lot of times, countries, people, nations, villages have been fighting over different belief systems. And actually, isn't that why we fight in the first place? When we have two different belief systems colliding, that creates conflict and sometimes war. So no wonder that anything that has to do with religion, which is Latin it comes from the word religo, which means I believe. So anything that comes from beliefs has a bad rep, in the sense that, well, beliefs is what's causing problems in the world, and especially if you have very firm beliefs, if you have convictions, if you are not flexible and open-minded, it can really lead to a lot of conflict. And this is why we are just like, it's easier to not deal with anything we believe in and just trust facts, science, whatever there's evidence for, that is considered reality, and much safer to be around than beliefs. And I totally understand that, because I certainly don't want anybody to tell me what to believe, and I certainly am not fond of having to believe in a particular belief system. I believe very much in the individual freedom to believe what suits you. But I believe it's very important that we each get to choose what we want to believe, and what we stand for, and what we are, what makes sense to us, what has resonance with us. Nevertheless, there's also a pitfall in this, because no matter what we believe, if it's called religion or spirituality, we can't really exist without believing in anything. If you take beliefs away from people, you take away their hope. So what's left if people don't have hope? So we have to believe in something. We have to live by some kind of convictions, rules, beliefs. So it's not possible to say, we'll just take away the beliefs and then there's no problems, then we just have facts. That is not an option, because people, we have a mind, and the mind is a meaning-making machine. So we are going to believe something anyway. And this is where religion has offered, different religions has offered different kinds of beliefs, so that we had like a system to tap into somebody who had already given a particular topic a lot of thought, and invited us in to share those beliefs that came out of those thought forms. And that has some positive aspect, because then we don't have to reinvent the wheel ourselves. But on the other hand, again, it has also been it has also proven to have so many pitfalls. Like, who is going to tell us what the truth is? Who knows what the truth is? Do we humans even know what the truth is? This is like the pitfall of all kinds of belief systems, and yet we need some. So where does spirituality come into the picture, and what does it have to do with leadership? This is a topic I'm very fond about, because people often look at my offerings, my leadership trainings, and they say, isn't she a little bit spiritual? And the answer is yes. I am spiritual, and I believe that many people are, because spirituality for me is just a part of the brain. It's like the new brain. It's this part of the brain, the frontal lobes. And this part of the brain is our ability to to create meaning out of events and see the bigger picture, like assemble all the different pieces of a puzzle into a whole. For me, that is spirituality. So yes, I'm spiritual because I use this ability every single day. And I am very grateful for this ability, because if I was only looking at facts and the emotions that derive from looking at those facts, I would be in a very different state. I would be much more devastated, much less optimistic. I would probably not be very hopeful looking at the events of the world today. I would be quite stressed, maybe even depressed. For me, that is definitely not something that enlivens and animates and brings up the best of my leadership. So I'm very grateful for that ability. For me, it's the ability to the ability to look at a particular event and not only see the facts, but see the different layers of that event and see the different possible interpretations. And if you look at any kind of event, let's take an event like war. We have war going on as I'm doing this talk. So there's many aspects and many layers of a war. It's not only one interpretation, who's right, who's wrong, good, bad, should be, should not be there. It's not only that's not the only meanings we can derive from this war. We can also look at it from the lower perspective and say, this is awful, this is devastating, this should never have happened. This is the other people's fault, that we have nothing to do with it. So being a cause for more hatred, more distancing, more othering, more despair, more stress, more devastation, more suffering, more terror. So that is one option. Another option is to look at what do I have to do with this war? Why do I experience this? And look inside and say, am I also sometimes at war with other people? And what are the mechanisms that contribute to this war? It could be my beliefs, it could be what I choose to believe, it could be what I choose to see in the other person, it could be how I choose to interpret their actions, it could be how what they trigger in me. So it could also be, so if you look a little bit closer, you could also see, well, they beep me off because they trigger me somehow. They trigger my irritation, my anger, my sadness, my grief. They trigger something in me, and I don't exactly know what it is, but I just know that it triggers resistance and rage and mixed emotions in me. And so a possible way of looking at this event is to say, what does that tell me about me? What is it? Why do I get triggered? What is it in me that creates this reaction? And then go and explore that reaction so that you find out, perhaps, well, it's because it reminds me when I was a child and people were trying to dominate me and I had no choice and I felt powerless. And this was such a traumatic experience that every time I come near something like that, I have a reaction. So when you look at it that way, it's like you open up Pandora's box and you discover something about yourself. And you might even get to the point where you discover, whoa, this other person might have a similar reaction or an action of resistance, because they too are triggered, they too are traumatized, they too have something in their inner treasure chest that causes this to happen. And so another way of looking at war would be to to actually have it be a trigger for more compassion. Wow, when we are traumatized, we do extremely stupid things. We have extremely primitive reactions. We have extremely we're in survival mode, and when we're in survival mode, we don't think very creatively. We don't think in a very civilized manner. We are just under pressure, and we do what we can to survive in that situation. So all our defense mechanisms go up, all our instincts go up, all our most primitive ways of working go up. So being reminded of that can actually foster compassion. And then you can look at it from another perspective. You can elevate the perspective and go into to this new brain, and you can look at war and you can say, what is war trying to teach us, and how is this particular war different from the other wars? Is there anything? Could there be any gold in this situation? Not that we have to sugarcoat anything, but could there be anything that can be learned, that can be dealt with in a new way, that can be could there be any good that could come out of this situation? And if we look at war and the current war that's going on, one of the extraordinary things that I observe is that it's rare that I have experienced the level of empathy and compassion from random people of the street. Just really, people are driving to the frontier and picking up strangers and inviting them into their homes, and it's like I have never in my lifetime experienced this level of empathy, compassion, willingness to help, willingness to serve each other, willingness to help and show the best of humanity, show love, show compassion, show the willingness to help, show the goodness, the benevolence of humanity. So this is an example of different levels of looking at a same event, and the possibilities, the choice of belief. And I believe modern spirituality is the ability to see those different options, and the ability and the awareness that we always have choice. What do we choose to give more meaning? And one of the reasons why I think we absolutely need to get interested in spirituality and not just reject it is because it is actually a very refined function of our brain. It is a gift we have been given that gives us the opportunity to see different things at a different level of consciousness. And at different levels, as you could see in this example, there are different interpretations, and those different interpretations give us different choice. I can choose now, do I want to go into the most primitive level, or do I want to elevate myself a little bit into looking at my own responsibility, or do I want to take the higher perspective that this could something good could actually come out of this terrible war? And I'm not saying this lightly. I know that many people are losing their dear ones, losing their health, losing their functionality. It is a horrible thing. But in my experience, sometimes the most light, most compassion, most love, most ability to serve, most depth, most nuances, most creativity, most ingenuity comes out of what is the most painful, like loss and sorrow and suffering. So we do have choice, and I believe it's important that we use this choice today, because if we stay on one level of consciousness, the lowest level, we're just going to act like animals because we're just going to be instinctual. If we go on a little bit higher level, we will still be able to meet what happens in a way where it generates more consciousness. But if we take the higher level, we can actually see, well, maybe there's a way to mobilize more of the highest of humanity in this particular situation. Maybe there is a possibility that we can all deal with war in a new way. Maybe we can start by eliminating the war inside ourselves, the war we have between different parts of ourselves, where we hate some parts of ourselves and attack certain parts of ourselves and hide and are ashamed of certain parts of ourselves. Maybe we can start by ending the war within ourselves, and then when we've done that, it will give us the surplus to be more peaceful and more spread more love and peace. True, real love and peace, not just something we say as a slogan, but actually something we feel. Maybe we then will affect the ether in a different manner. We know that from quantum physics. We can actually measure a person that emanates hate and stress will affect the ether in a different manner than a person who emanates love and peace. So when Dalai Lama comes to town, you can almost feel it in the air, because the ether is affected by a person who holds a very high level of presence in this area of his brain. And that actually has a different effect on the magnetic field, and that emanates a different kind of energy in the ether, which affects the ether. So I do sometimes do interviews with thought leaders or with business people who have found new interesting ways. And one of the interviews I did recently was with a Danish guy, Henning Jensen, who is really good at explaining quantum physics. He's an engineer, so he's a nerd with all these with all this scientific aspect, and he was very good at explaining that studies actually show that when you are stressed and in negative, the energy that emanates from your field is very disrupted and it's like disturbed in some ways, and it activates the nervous system in a different manner. It's like it activates your own stress and your own inner non-peace. Whereas if you are in your heart and you have positive thoughts and you are calm and loving and have inner peace, you can actually see that the energy field, you can measure that the energy field changes. These what do you call these, vague in French, but I'm not speaking French right now. These energy, what do you call them? These energy waves. The energy waves are much more harmonious. So it does have a different effect in the ether around us. So what if we were more aware of that and decided altogether to have to emanate different energy? So we would not be, we would know that we have the choice between being stuck in fear and choosing the higher way, which is to make peace with ourselves, test it on our surroundings. So if you think you're enlightened, go home and spend a week with your family and find out if you really are, and test yourself there and test if you can maintain inner peace and peace around you, even around people who might trigger you because they know you so well and you know them so well that you can know how to trigger each other. Test that and see if you can help resolve conflicts in a new manner, where you don't have any resentment or any inner conflict going on, or any attacks or any trash talking or any of those old-fashioned ways of creating pain and suffering for each other. This could be a new manner, and that's why I think that spiritual awareness is quite important for modern leaders, because we have tested and tried a lot of the old methods. We know a lot of the lower ways of dealing with the situation, but we have tested very few of the higher ways. We have not tested them on a permanent level. We have a few people in our society who can display these higher levels of consciousness, but very few, myself included, are able to do it on a consistent basis at all times, in all situations. Most of us get wobbly from time to time and get out of balance, and we have to do something to get ourselves back in balance and back in a field where we can emanate real peace and love and harmony. So leaders are in a special situation, because leaders, formal and informal, but especially formal leaders, are in a special situation because they do affect so much. They affect their team, they affect their company, they affect the world with what they produce and how they produce it. So they do have a big responsibility in what you believe in and what you choose to believe in certain situations. Because you will be like the lighthouse that shows the path for other people. And people will look to you and look for how do I deal with this particular situation? So you have a very important role to play. And I believe if you don't use your spiritual intelligence, your choice of interpretation, your choice of belief, your choice of what you want to put into the field, the collective field, will be limited, and you will not have access to the highest field. Some people have it naturally, they naturally come from the heart, but most people, myself included, have something, a little part of our brain called the ego, and that little cousin is one of the challenges that we are born with that can make it a little bit difficult to remain in peace and love at all times. Because this is a part of us that was, it's sort of you could say it's an inner protection system. It protects us from feeling pain. So we have all kinds of and actually it makes us feel pain a lot of the time, but it looks like it protects us by creating defense systems between us and other people, by rejecting them, by feeling better than them or smaller than them, or it seems like it's a protection, but what the protection actually hides is our inner wounded self, and the one who is hyper afraid of being rejected, being lonely, being less than, being not okay, being not accepted, being not good enough. And because we have this particular mechanism inside of us, all of us, it is until we are aware of that, until we're conscious of that, it will tend to rule us. So, for example, in companies today, we talk a lot about psychological safety, creating psychological safety for our employees, and we talk about that because we now know so much about the nervous system and about the brain that we know if leaders put pressure on people, if leaders act like authoritarian parents who demand things of their employees, who are hard in their tones, who are shielded and act like they are superior human beings, that will create psychological unsafety. It will alert all the trauma field in the groups, consciously or unconsciously. It will reenact our childish behaviors, and it will make us feel unsafe. And what happens when we feel unsafe? First of all, we emanate stress, and we emanate a different kind of a non-benevolent energy field around us, but also it kills our creativity. Because in order to be creative, we need to be calm, cool, and connected. That's where we are most creative. That's where we are most in our genius zone. So psychological safety is important. However, many leaders who are not in touch with their spirituality, who are not in touch with their spiritual intelligence, will not be safe around people who will be honest towards them, people who will maybe critique, people who give them negative feedback, people who will be honest about, this does not work. That can be very threatening to our ego. And as leaders, it's more comfortable to put ourselves on a pedestal, like, I never make any mistakes, I am unbeatable, untouchable, and I'm just a superior human being. It's much easier than to deal with your employees as equal human beings who have an important input for you about your own blind spot. So as leaders, it actually requires quite a high level of consciousness to be able to tackle the unconscious and conscious resistance, what comes up in employees around you, what gets triggered around them, and to have the ability to keep the higher perspective so that you can deal with all that and welcome it and transmute it into more understanding, more compassion, and a more conducive feel, rather than more conflict, more upheaval, more resistant, more backstabbing, whatever. So that's why I think this is a very relevant link for leaders to have, the ability to travel up the level of consciousness and look at things from a different perspective, from a higher perspective, and also know that there are a myriad of possibilities available for a leader. And once we know that, we have choice. How do we choose to react? And many people ask me, why do you spend so much time on the personal development of the leaders in your leadership trainings? And they think, oh, this is very soft, and isn't that very feminine? And why don't we learn some more systems? And I say, you can learn systems everywhere, but the inner leadership is going to affect your outer leadership, and it's going to affect your team, and it's going to affect the decisions you make for your company, and your company is going to affect the world. So you can learn so many systems from head to head, but what the new leadership is heart to heart. And it's also the higher consciousness, you could say the new brain to the new brain. Then we can really create something new. We cannot create something new from the old mind with its old separation, its old suffering, its old trauma field, its old patterns, reptile patterns. We can't create something new. We'll keep repeating history if we keep using the old parts of us. And if we are not aware, at all times, what the difference between me and an animal or any other creatures, what's so amazing about human beings is that we do have choice. We do have choice. Stimuli, response, we do have choice. Unless our nervous system is so triggered that we are on autopilot, and many of us are, when we feel fearful, when we feel threatened, when we suffer, we go on autopilot. And that's why we need methods, systems, remedies, awareness that I do still have choice. If I am aware, for example, if I use my breath consciously, that is a very easy, accessible, and free manner to calm my nervous system until it's so calm that I do have choice. Of course, I'm not talking about if there's somebody with a bullet at your pointing at you, and I know I really feel with the people who are now in war zones. Many times we're talking survival instincts, and so the choice goes out of the window when you're in that situation. But still, I have also been in simulated war zones, and I have been in life-threatening situations. My son got very ill with incurable cancer, and I had to face that he was dying in my arms. So I have been in situations where it's so life-threatening. Where's the choice? Where's the choice? I could not save my son. I didn't have that choice. But I could choose how I chose to respond to it. So I have a personal experience of the power of choice, because when he died, and I could have gone into suffering for the rest of my life, which was very tempting, and my first immediate choice of what else to choose. But then I remembered there is this little choice point between stimuli and response, and I do have the option of choosing something else. So I made an irrational choice. I said, I want to go up instead of down from this event. And that's what I experienced that I was able to do. Not that my life became, it's not that I was dancing out of that hospital suite. I was so devastated, you have no idea. Still, it's 10 years ago when I talk about it. Oh my goddess, I really feel the pain. So it's not to say, yeah, from then on, I was just happy. No, I was not. But I had made a choice. And that choice was directing my further, the choices I made from there. Who do I choose to talk to? What do I choose to make of things? What do I choose to believe? What do I choose to believe? Do I choose to believe something that is putting me down, or something that is lifting me and other people up? So I did choose to believe something that was an upgrade for myself and my family, and for my life and the people who are around me. So I have experienced we do have choice at any time. How do we choose to respond? And we get that choice by using our spiritual mind, our higher perspective. I believe this is where leadership comes from. Because if you are not using that part of yourself, in reality, you are in victimhood. Because then you don't have choice. You are an autopilot, you are the victim of other people's behavior, victim of circumstances, victim of what happens in your life, which you have, in many times, you have no say. I mean, there's so many events that happen in our world where we have no choice. Leaders, and we can take this situation, the current war. People in Ukraine and Russia who are going about their regular lives, I mean, what influence do they have on this situation? Quite little. So many times, the things that we experience in our life were not something where we had a conscious choice. It just happened. But we can choose how we respond and what we choose to believe. And this is why I believe that leadership and spirituality are intrinsically immersed. Now, I was choosing this topic today. I'm doing a topic every Friday on, for the time being, on the leadership in the 21st century, and especially this decade, and especially this year. And I could talk about a myriad of things, but today is my oldest son's birthday. He's turning 20. And so in honor of him, I chose to do a topic about one of the things he always said to me when he was a child. He said, "Oh yeah, I get it now. There are two kinds of religion. There's Christianity and then there's Kirstenianity." So Kirstenianity. So it's easier to say in Danish. There's Kristendommen og Kirstendommen. And so he had quite early on, he got that I chose to have certain beliefs, and I was very faithful to those beliefs. And one of the beliefs I have is that is to use our full selves. So I always say, no, it's not enough with the mind. We also have intuition. Then we're using our whole selves. So that's part of the Christianity. It's like, why only use part of ourselves when we have access to the whole? That makes no sense. So so he's grown up with the other. That's Christianity. And also, like another part of Christianity is that to be quite aware that we all influence the energy around us. So what do you choose to put in the room? Do you choose to put something that's uplifting in the room, or something that is pulling everybody else down? So that's also part of the Christianity that I choose to believe in, is like we have that choice. So what do we choose to put in? What do we choose to contribute to a room? Do we come in and are we just nagging and going on complaining and going on and on about what's horrible in life, or are we can do that, and we can give that space, and we can even say, I need to vent something, I just need a soundboard, I need to be non-spiritual for a little moment and just say what I feel, and however unconscious that might be. But then what do we choose to do about it? Do we choose then to explore different perspectives on how this could be actually something that would make us grow, make us expand, make us more enlightened? That is always the option that I suggest we choose, because the other options is just trashing other people and complaining even more. It's just like putting the energy down. So that's also part of what I choose to believe in. That is I just found that it gives me a better life. So I'm very aware of the energy that I put into things and that I offer other people. So, and part of the Christianity is also always to work on the inside. So if you have a problem on the outside, look inside and see, how am I part of this problem, and how can I do something to alter this problem? Maybe I can't change the circumstances themselves, but then I can change my response around them, and thus create a different outcome, and definitely contribute with a much better energy and a more inspiring energy than just being the poor little poor little victim of circumstances. So I do believe in certain things, and he quickly learned that. And sometimes when I will say, he will come with something, and I will suggest, well, look at the inside and work with, if there's part of yourself that's attacking yourself, maybe see if you can make friends with that part, and thus, avoid the self-attack part. So if you can lessen that and you can heighten your awareness, then you're better off. However, when I do teach my leadership trainings, I consider myself a facilitator, somebody who presents my the beloveds who come to my trainings. I introduce them to different concepts. I introduce them to different. I find it so fascinating what we have learned in the past 20 years about the brain, about the nervous system, about what impact choice has on it. We can now measure it. We can measure what happens in the brain. We can measure that when we give each other a hug and it lasts 20 seconds, we can measure that bling, bling, bling. It actually affects parts of the brain. It actually affects our happiness. It opens our systems. Whereas if we are in an environment where we have a lot of hatred and negative energy, it lowers our energy. We can measure that. So I love to introduce the leadership people in my trainings to these concepts, but I never tell other people what to believe. I suggest, but I find that one of the big differences between religion and spirituality is that religion is much more dogmatic. It's a closed system with dogmas that have been passed on from generation to generation, and who knows what the original belief or original idea was. We have no idea at this point, because it's been through so many layers of interpretation that we don't know what was the original truth. And I believe it's very important that we use our own ability to interpret things, and our own ability to think, our own intelligence, including the spiritual intelligence, to decipher what resonates with what's deep inside me, my deep sense of the great mystery we're all part of. So I never tell people to believe in anything particular, but I suggest that we do like the scientists. So I offer some concept and I say, please experiment and notice the results. So this way you get your own experience, your own lived experience of certain ideas and ways of seeing the world. So I find that's part of the new spiritual intelligence, is to say no. Dogmas, I mean, if it had led the world to a happier, peaceful place, go for it. But that's not the case. We have actually seen a lot of war in the name of religion, a lot of hatred, a lot of slaughter. I mean, in the name, good old Jesus, apparently he said, turn the other cheek. But I mean, how many people have been killed in the name of Jesus? It's countless. So people, because of that little part of ourselves, the ego that is actually defending us and using and abusing religious dogmas for our own self-interest and our own protection of that inner wounded child, I think we have to be very mindful that religion is not necessarily the truth. And the truth can perhaps better be found if we look at the different religions and put them together and take the best of the whole. For example, from Christianity, we can take the power of the heart, which can now be measured, that the heart is so much more powerful than the mind. So that is a very good part or useful part to take along from Christianity, to use the power of the heart, and also to look at the example of Jesus, how he was dealing with people who were against him, or people who were technically under his so-called status, how he was going about other people. We can learn a lot from that attitude, and seeing how staying in the heart is different from going into the mind. And this is where we can use the inspiration from Buddhism, from Buddha, who was teaching us that the mind is a very dangerous place. Don't go there alone. The mind is where the trouble starts. That's where suffering happens, because that's what we choose to believe about something. So without the mind, if we are aware, if we can just stay aware and just breathe and just observe and witness whatever the mind figures out, then we can actually stay in inner peace. We don't have to be in antagonism with the world. We might also be inspired, I know this is very controversial, but we might also be inspired by certain aspects of the other Eastern cultures, like Hinduism, the incarnation, the incarnation, or at least the law of karma. What you send out could very well come back to yourself. So what do you want to receive? Would you like to receive more love or less love? If you want to receive more love and more peace and more understanding, good idea to offer that to the world. Whereas if you don't mind more hatred and more suffering, feel free. You can just bring it on. I mean, that can also be offered to the world, but that will lead to a different result. So the spirituality that the modern leader needs to or could is offered the possibility to choose and to experiment with and notice the result, could be from many different religions, actually looking at the best part. We also have religions who are very much about community. We have religions, or not religions, but indigenous cultures are very much in touch with the power of nature. And I believe that is absolutely necessary for the modern leader to look at nature and study biomimicry and find out, why is it that nature works so well? Maybe we should adopt that into our businesses and our communities. What makes nature work well might make us work well, because we are part of nature. So we are so fortunate today, because we have a whole smorgasbord. We have us who sit here in the West and who are not at war. We have the possibility to study these traditions, these spiritual traditions, and take the best. I love the spiritual tradition from yoga, which tells us there's a lot of psychological clarity to be accessed through the body. So if you work with the body, you actually work on the mind at the same time. So you can clear fixed thought patterns through working with enhancing the flexibility of your body. Flexible body, flexible mind. What do we need today? Do we need a closed mind, or do we need a more open mind? The choice is yours. But if you want a more open mind, it's a good idea to, let go of some of the tensions in your body, because that will affect your mind. So the spirituality I am on about, the Kirstendom, that I suggest in, or the Kirstenianity that I invite my leadership, not even students, but my leadership participants to explore from, is actually many different traditions. And I love to couple it with modern science, because it's so amazing today how everything can be measured and everything can be explained. Science and mysticism are really, really meeting each other these years, because it's not rocket science. It's logical. When you look at the data and when you look at the experiments we have made in the past 20 years, we can see that the inner world affects the outer world, and the choice we make that affects that what's happening in our environments, and the energy we emanate has an effect on other people, even people we're not in the same room with. So I once went to a conference about quantum physics, and that's when I was living in New York City and was reporting in New York City about. I was reporting about new trends, and whoever I found interesting, I interviewed them, and I did an article or something about a radio show or some video broadcast. And once I went to a conference with quantum physicists from all over the world. It was like some kind of celebration of Niels Bohr, the Danish quantum physicist. And I asked these mostly guys who were at the conference, I asked, what is the most exciting news on this conference? What do you find so most fascinating about quantum physics? And one of them said, I find it so fascinating that two objects who have been in touch, if you put these two objects light years from each other, the moment you alter something in object A, in that same moment it alters in object B. In other words, if we have even been remotely in touch, and we are through our human DNA, we're so the same. We all have a heart, we all have a brain, we all have a blood system, we all have a body. We're so the same. So we are the same species. So even though we are light years from each other, we can still affect each other. And he said, that is the most fascinating. It is so mystical how it can happen, but that's just how it is. And this is maybe this is a good way to end this little talk, to say, wow, if you only take that away from this little input about spirituality and leadership, may it be that because we are the human species, we are all connected, and we all affect the whole. So what do you choose to put into the whole? And especially if you're a leader, you have a very direct influence on the whole. What do you choose to pour into the whole? And this is the question I will leave you with today. I am available. I was about to say 24/7, but that's not true. But I am always available in my inbox, and you can choose to send me a personal message if you find this so interesting that you would like to explore it more. You might want to take a look at my leadership training programs. I have a website called illuminaryleadership.com for Danish people. I have one called fremtidsleder.dk, and these are programs where we train these muscles, these new muscles, because let's face it, these new muscles are not very fit yet, because it's quite new. As I said, in the past 20 years, this is where we have discovered so many of these truths. We no longer need to believe. We have evidence for these beliefs. Yet, yes, we can affect the whole, and we do affect the whole. So I suggest that if you got interested in that, you check my pages, and if you got curious, you can book a free session with me. It's on book.kirstenstendevand.com, and then you can see if you feel called to explore these concepts more and dive deeper into them and get them under your own skin, so you can start using these tools in your daily life and affect your leadership in a different manner. I'll just take a little moment to look through the many comments. Thank you so much for commenting, and thank you so much. So good to see that we are not alone, that we're many people who are working on along the same lines, and who are on about a new way of leading, and a new way of thinking, new way of acting, new way of feeling. So thank you so much to all of you who spend your time listening to this, and also to all of you who are doing an amazing piece of work in the world to change it for the very better. All right, thank you so much, and have a wonderful day. And I will go on and celebrate my beloved son, who is turning 20 today. And thank you, Cosmo, for giving me a whole new branch of spirituality called Kirsteniality. All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.